what are the benefits in doing so in terms of your career, in terms of if you want to do this as a professional? All right, welcome back to another episode of Lesotho's Pride. This is part 3 of the Hudson River flight that we had done back in December. So as some of you guys know, I did a flight back in December, flying overhead the Hudson River, seeing the Manhattan skyline, transitioning through John F. Kennedy International Airport airspace, Newark Airport airspace, as well as LaGuardia airspace. And after that flight, it sparked a interest, or sparked a question. How does one convert their SACAA or their SACAA license to an FAA license? So in this video, we are going to be covering this, and we're going to see what are the benefits in doing so in terms of your career, in terms of if you want to do this as a professional. Okay, so there are 2 reasons as to why you'd want to get an FAA license, particularly the commercial pilot license with instrument rating and as well the multi-engine piston attachment to that. The first reason is this: there are a number of November registered aircraft based across Africa where you could apply for short-term contracts either as a first officer or as single pilot operations, that is PIC, pilot in command, or as a captain on an aircraft whenever you have the right experience. So with these NREG aircraft, then at least you'd be one of the few candidates, well, at least I think you'd be one of the few candidates who'd be eligible to apply to fly or ferry the aircraft to whatever destination that they need to go, right? So, for example, in South Africa, if you have a South African license, you're allowed to fly any other foreign aircraft as PIC, but within the South African airspace. If you go beyond that, then you would have to actually have that license for that particular registered aircraft for that particular country. So in this instance, if somebody, let's say, had a November registered aircraft in South Africa and needs to ferry it to Zambia, then at least you'd be one of the few individuals who could do that because you have an FAA license. I'll give another example. When I was in China, I was part of a WeChat group of pilots. These pilots were all pretty much private jet rated, or rated on aircraft which are private jets, and a number of aircraft in China are November registered. It was just easier for the owners of the aircraft to do so. And so you would find that a lot of the contracts that were available, whether it was a flight from, let's say, Beijing to Hong Kong or Shanghai to Xi'an, etc., they would request for an FAA rated pilot. And so that's benefit number 1, to be eligible for a number of short-term contracts on November registered aircraft across the world. The second reason is that if you want to make a move to the United States, you of course need to have an FAA license to fly November registered aircraft in their national airspace. But the thing is, before you make your move to the US, you'd be applying for a particular visa, whether it's through the F1 visa program, that is if you were studying and then you want to work for, I believe it's either for a year or 2, or if it's an investor visa, the H1B1, although the H1B1 is particularly tricky if you want to be a pilot in the United States, because they're very protective of their labor, of their industry. But the most common one would be an EB2 visa. Basically, you're an individual with exceptional skills. You have an exceptional skills to offer, right? And so if you already have an FAA license and you submit that alongside with your visa application, then it will just put you in better stead. Okay, so now that we know what the benefits are to getting an FAA license, let's look at the process behind it when you're coming from South Africa. So first things first, you would go to a website called IACRA. IACRA stands for Integrated Airman Certification and Rating Application. Basically, what you want to get from this website is what is called a verification of authentication letter. So what happens is the FAA contacts the CAA, or the authoritative body of your license, to say, hey, does this guy or does this lady actually have a pilot license in your country? Then the SACAA will say, yes, he does, or yes, she does. And then FAA is like, okay, Perfect, great. Now we can issue a verification of authentication letter. So this letter will take about 30 to 90 days to be issued, depending on how long communication takes between the two regulatory bodies. After that, you have to take this letter to a FSDO office, Flight Standards District Office. Now, this you can only do so in the United States, so you have to plan a trip there. So you'll take this letter to a FSDO and you will submit it to an inspector alongside all the supplementary documents that they would request. Naturally, you will request this beforehand before you travel, so they'll tell you the most up-to-date documents that they would want. Okay, so when you do meet with the flight inspector, you're going to give copies of your foreign license, you're going to give copies of your foreign medical, the verification of authentication certificate, as well as copies of your passport. Now, in that appointment itself, that inspector may ask you some questions on the federal aviation regulations. And the reason behind this is just to test your English standard. They want to know that when you're operating in their national airspace system, that you have the required English level to listen and speak on the radio. But essentially, there's no other form of test, right? So they'll say, okay, great, this person looks competent or sounds competent. We will then issue you an FAA foreign-based pilot license. So if you have a commercial pilot license, they will issue you an FAA PPL license. The reason being, the differences between an FAA CPL or commercial certificate and the SACAA commercial pilot license is that the flight test standards are a little bit different. So when you get the foreign-based FAA license, if you have a private pilot license from the SACAA, they will issue you a private pilot license, FAA foreign-based private pilot license. If you have a commercial pilot license from the SACAA, they will still issue you a FAA foreign-based private pilot license. The reason being is the flight standards differences between the FAA commercial certificate and the SACAA commercial pilot license is that they test more so on your flight skills in the US. For example, with the FAA CPL, you have to do maneuvers like chandelles, lazy eights, whereas in the SAA CPL, they don't do that. The FAA focuses more on your flying skills, your hand flying skills, whereas the SACAA follows that more so of your navigational skills. And this is tied with the former JAR or now the EASA licensing body. So once you get that PPL, once the PPL is in your hand, the next thing that you have to do is you book an appointment with an ATO in the US, right? And you're going to fly with an instructor, and you're just going to demonstrate to the instructor that you're competent enough to fly. Do some maneuvers, radio work, some navigation, and when the instructor is satisfied, then they will endorse your logbook. Now you're clear to go. You're clear to fly with a November registered aircraft in the US airspace system. The limitation with an FAA foreign-based license is that your license will be tied to your foreign-based license. So if your medical expires, your FAA license medical will expire. If your SACA license will expire, your FAA foreign-based private pilot license will also expire, right? So this is where you will need to do things slightly differently, particularly for the commercial pilot license. Just use the FAA foreign-based private pilot license to begin your chapter in getting your FAA commercial pilot license, right? So you'll have the PPL, the foreign-based PPL. You'll sign yourself to an ATO. You must have either an M1 or F1 visa. It's very important. Otherwise, things become very difficult. So have that visa, take that license with you, and then begin doing the instrument rating, the independent instrument rating test, right? Written test. You can do the foreign-based instrument rating test, but then again, that will make your PPL instrument tied to your SACA license, and you don't want that, right? Okay, so you do the independent instrument rating test. You do the necessary required hours in order for you to be ready for that skills test, right? So instrumenting written test, do the actual instrument rating skills test and then do the commercial skills test, and then you'll get an independent FAA license. Now, there are certain benefits to getting an independent FAA license, and that there is no expiration date on the license itself, versus that of the SACAA, where you have to either renew it every 12 months or every 2 years and all of that stuff, right? Okay, so there's no expiration date. All you have to do is a revalidation flight with an appropriate instructor. Now, of course, all of this is very expensive, so one would have to budget appropriately for this, and one would have to say to themselves, okay, what is the cost-benefit analysis? Is there a lot of potential work for me to get across the continent of Africa, flying November-registered aircraft? Is this really something that's going to be beneficial? Am I starting to make a move to the United States? So I think, right, okay, this is the right time for me to budget and to do all the necessary things to get my FAA license. Okay. By the way, it's not only work across the African continent. You can apply for work anywhere around the world with a November-registered aircraft. So just make a note of that. All right. Thank you very much, guys, for watching. This was a very short video. I hope this answered a number of your questions. If you do have more questions, you can comment below and we can extend the dialogue through the comment section. If you find this interesting, make sure to subscribe to the channel as well as like this video and hit that notification bell. We want to ensure that these videos get to the right people who want to watch it. So by doing so, you are not only helping me, but you're helping others out there. So thanks very much, and I'll catch you next time.
Let's go. Yeah. I'm like an addict, do I gotta have it. I ain't even playing, got a really bad habit. If it moves, gotta grab it, fuse like a magnet. Lose, won't have it till I'm doomed in a casket. I ain't playing, got a weird mind. If you work 8 hours, I'ma work 9. If the shit tastes sour, you should taste mine. I'ma stay in power for a long time.